It was January 13th, 2012. The Costa Concordia, a floating palace, embarked on what should have been a dream cruise. On board were 4,200 passengers, families, honeymooners, retirees, all basking in the luxury of this Mediterranean voyage. The ship glided through the waters, its lights glittering like a beacon of joy. But beneath the surface, disaster awaited. At 9:45 p.m., the unthinkable happened. The ship's captain, Francesco Schettino, had ordered the vessel dangerously close to Giglio Island for a salute, a reckless maneuver to impress. Suddenly the hull scraped against a submerged rock. The sound was deafening, metal tearing apart as if the ship itself were screaming. The impact tore a 160-foot gash in the ship's side, and water flooded in at an alarming rate. Passengers initially thought it was a minor mishap, perhaps turbulence or an issue with the ship's engines. But as the ship began to tilt and the lights flickered ominously, panic spread. Crew members tried to reassure passengers, but confusion reigned. Families clutched each other, some weeping as the ship's list grew steeper by the minute. When the evacuation order finally came, it was too late for an orderly escape. Lifeboats dangled at precarious angles, making boarding them a dangerous endeavor. In the chaos, some lifeboats overturned, spilling terrified passengers into the frigid Mediterranean waters. Others were forced to jump from the deck into the sea, clutching makeshift flotation devices. One mother recounted the nightmare of losing her grip on her daughter as the ship tilted violently. "I thought I'd never see her again," she later said. Miraculously, a stranger in the water managed to hold the girl until they were rescued hours later. But not everyone was as fortunate. 32 lives were lost that night, and hundreds more bore the physical and emotional scars of the disaster. And the captain? He abandoned ship before the evacuation was complete, earning the infamous nickname Captain Coward. For the survivors, the sound of scraping metal and the cries for help still haunt their dreams. London, New Year's Eve, 1936. On Manor Lane in Hither Green, families gathered for a neighborhood party. Laughter echoed through the house as children played games and adults toasted the new year. The home was alive with warmth and celebration, but beneath their feet, a silent killer lurked. For days, a gas leak had been building beneath the house. The smell had gone unnoticed, dismissed as lingering smoke from the coal fires, but the mixture of gas and air was reaching a critical point, and all it needed was a spark. At 11:58 p.m., just moments before midnight, the unthinkable happened. The explosion ripped through the house with a deafening roar, shattering windows and leveling the structure. The force of the blast was so immense that neighboring houses also crumbled, leaving a trail of fire and debris. Flames shot into the night sky, and the once lively street was plunged into chaos. Neighbors rushed outside, their faces pale with shock. A teenage boy, Edward, had been thrown clear of the explosion. Dazed and bleeding, he stumbled through the rubble, calling out for his family. Around him, others emerged from the wreckage, coughing and covered in soot, while cries for help echoed from the ruins. Rescue efforts began almost immediately. Neighbors and emergency responders worked tirelessly to pull survivors from the rubble. Tragically, Edward's parents and younger sister were among the 15 lives lost that night. Investigators later determined that the explosion was caused by a cracked gas pipe beneath the house. A preventable tragedy. The memory of that night lingers, a haunting reminder of how quickly joy can turn to sorrow. San Juan, Puerto Rico, New Year's Eve, 1986. The Dupont Plaza Hotel was a place to be. Hundreds of guests packed the casino, the ballroom, and the lobby, ready to welcome 1987 in style. The air was electric with anticipation, but behind the scenes, a storm was brewing. A labor dispute had escalated to dangerous levels, and 3 disgruntled employees decided to take matters into their own hands. What they planned as an act of protest turned into a catastrophe. At approximately 3:30 p.m., the men set fire to furniture in the hotel's ballroom. The flames spread faster than they anticipated, feeding on flammable decorations and cheap synthetic materials that filled the room. Within minutes, the fire spiraled out of control, transforming the ballroom into an inferno. Thick, toxic smoke poured into the hallways and up the stairwells, reaching the crowded casino and trapping hundreds of guests. Chaos erupted. People screamed and shoved as they scrambled for the exits, but the hotel's design created deadly bottlenecks. Many exits were either locked or poorly marked, leaving panicked guests to succumb to the smoke. The casino, once alive with laughter and cheers, became a death trap. Linda, an American tourist, was inside with her husband when the fire began. "We tried to escape together," she later recounted, "but the crowd pushed us apart. I made it out. He didn't." By the time firefighters extinguished the blaze, 97 people had perished, and over 140 were injured. The tragedy shook Puerto Rico to its core. The perpetrators were arrested and convicted, but for the victims' families, the pain of that night could never be undone. Reykjavik, Iceland, New Year's Eve, 1942. A U.S. Army transport plane carried 23 soldiers and crew, eager to join the celebrations at the military base. The passengers, many of them young men far from home, laughed and swapped stories as the plane ascended into the stormy night. But Iceland's winter weather was unforgiving. Snow and icy winds battered the aircraft, and visibility was near zero. The pilots struggled to navigate through the blizzard, their instruments flickering as freezing rain coated the windshield. Communication with the control tower became sporadic, adding to the mounting tension in the cockpit. Passengers, sensing something was wrong, tightened their seatbelts and braced themselves. At 10:45 p.m., the plane crashed into a hill just outside Reykjavik. The explosion was so powerful, it lit up the snowy landscape, a fireball tearing through the night. Locals, startled by the blast, rushed to the scene with lanterns and blankets, braving the freezing temperatures. The wreckage was a devastating sight: twisted metal, scattered debris, and flames consuming what remained of the aircraft. Out of the 23 on board, only 5 survived. One of them, Lieutenant Jack Porter, later described being pulled from the burning wreckage by an Icelandic farmer. "I owe him my life," he wrote, "but I live with the guilt of surviving when so many didn't." For years, the crash site became a place of mourning. Families of the victims and locals alike visited the hill to pay their respects. The tragedy left a scar on Reykjavik, a haunting reminder of the war's reach, even in this remote corner of the world. Perm, Russia, New Year's Eve 2009. The Lame Horse nightclub was the city's hotspot, known for its unique decor and lively atmosphere. Over 300 people gathered that night, eager to celebrate the arrival of 2010. The decorations, rustic wooden beams, hay bales, and synthetic fabric, created a cozy, festive ambiance. But those very decorations would become their undoing. At around 11:15 p.m., as the party was in full swing, club staff lit handheld sparkler to enhance the celebration. Sparks flew, igniting the flammable materials on the ceiling. Within seconds, flames raced across the room. Guests initially thought it was part of the show, but the reality became clear as thick black smoke descended, choking the air. Panic erupted. The club had only one functional exit, and the narrow doorway quickly became a bottleneck. People screamed and shoved, desperate to escape. Some climbed over others, while many collapsed from the toxic fumes. Witnesses outside described the horrifying sound of screams fading as the fire consumed the building. Firefighters arrived quickly, but by then, the damage was done. The fire claimed 156 lives, leaving countless others with severe burns and lifelong trauma. Survivors like Katia, a 23-year-old student, recounted the chaos. "I saw the flames spread so fast. People were pushing and falling. I lost my best friend that night." The tragedy exposed glaring safety violations, leading to stricter fire regulations across Russia. But for the victims' families, those changes came too late. These stories are not just tragedies, they are warnings. A spark, a leak, a careless decision. That's all it takes for joy to turn to horror. As you celebrate your next New Year's Eve, remember these tales. Look around, cherish the moment, and never take safety for granted. Life is fragile, and sometimes the unexpected is closer than you think. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to get updates on my next video. Up next is True New Year's Day Horror Stories. What a perfect way to start the brand new year, with even more horror to alert the senses and keep you on your toes. My big announcement will be said at the end of next video. I didn't forget, so stay tuned for more soon. Until next time, stay safe and sleep well, but do not forget, we're always watching.